Hi, I'm Pastor Duke. Thank you for your interest in this very unique Disciple Makers Field Training Manual. Please hang with me for just a few minutes. I'm going to describe discipleship in a way that I'm sure you've never heard before. I guarantee you will be divinely impacted by what I have to share. How can I make such a statement? Well, it's because many pastors and ministry leaders have confirmed the huge impact of this training manual for themselves and their churches, and they are enthusiastically supporting it with their video testimonies you can watch at the bottom of this webpage. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of disciple making programs or study courses available out there. As an ordained men's ministry pastor myself, I've participated in many and can count my blessings for all that I've learned from what I'll call general discipleship. Examples are men's fellowships, men's breakfasts, small groups, Bible studies, weekend retreats, and so forth. All of these examples are necessary in our journey toward a deepening relationship with Jesus and our sanctification. So, why is this disciple makers training any different than those others? What makes this training so unique? Let me share a bit of my biblical worldview. As I began my journey as a committed follower and disciple of Jesus, I found that all too many men were horribly failing at being the spiritual leaders of their marriages, homes, families, and everywhere else. The majority of so called Christian men were hardly excelling in their walk with Jesus. The statistics that support this view are staggering and to most quite obvious. Just look at the failed marriages, children raised by the mother, substance abuse, pornography, abortion, and so much more. And these things are just a small representation of how men have failed in their God given responsibilities to be the spiritual leader of our time. There is a problem that needs our attention, and it's become urgent. Upon further study, I found that most men of God desire to become better, but they seem to be trapped in a cycle of discipleship that did not demand replication. That is, discipleship in general is necessary and it's commanded as part of our Christ-like journey. But I found a big hole or gap with what discipleship was supposed to produce. Not only are we to disciple others, but we are to be teaching others how to go forth and make disciples, not just disciple. The Great Commission, as Jesus commanded in Matthew 28:19 and 20, appears to have become more the great suggestion when it comes to duplication. So let me clarify the confusion and the unique advantage to you for utilizing this Disciple Makers training manual. Jesus didn't command, go therefore and disciple. He said, go therefore and make disciples. And there's a difference. I find there are tons of men being discipled, but not being taught or trained on how to become disciple makers. And frankly, therein lies the problem with the declining culture of men who are more married to the world than to Jesus. If general discipleship was the only thing we needed to do, then we should see an incline of men living for God's purposes, not such an obvious decline of our men. Let me add at this point that there are countless men who have become better husbands, fathers, and leaders in our communities by traditional discipleship programs. However, I can also declare a great failure of men who are not being trained to be disciple makers, and that is a problem. There are essentially two unique advantages to this Disciple Makers Field Training Manual that sets it apart from all other discipleship programs. First, the training gets right to the bottom line of defining the four foundations whereby we can live out the purposes of God to glorify Him in all that we do. In my own years of study, I have found there are four foundations present in most all discipleship programs, but usually only in a subliminal or indirect way, when what they really need to be is at the forefront of all these discipleship platforms. The four foundations are: number one, loving God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Number two, the inerrancy of the scriptures as 100% true and trustworthy, as 2 Timothy 3:16 declares. Number three, the reality and power of the Holy Spirit. And number four, the reality of Satan and his demons that we describe as spiritual warfare. Within these four foundations, of course, is prayer. Prayer is how we ask God to reveal all that He desires us to learn and to do according to His will. Second, this Disciple Makers Training Manual demands the essence and purpose of replication by duplication, the one critical call to action that's missing from all these other discipleship programs. So let me add something here. Make no mistake, I see the encouragement of replication and duplication in many of these so-called disciple maker teachings, but they continue to fall short of the results that we need to see in our men and in our culture today, as they take months or even years before a man is prepared to go forth as Jesus commanded. It's as if these other discipleship programs focus really only on biblical knowledge of the scriptures and with no call to action for the application of making disciple makers. We most certainly don't serve a God of confusion, so this Disciple Makers Field Training Manual removes the clutter or fog and confusions from being able to make disciple makers, as Paul instructed Timothy in his last letter to Timothy in 2 Timothy 2:2, where Paul writes, "As you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified or equipped to teach others." There is plenty of go-do being said by many men's leaders and church leaders, but not enough how-to. That's the problem. To summarize, this Disciple Makers Field Training Manual cuts right to the bottom line of learning the key points of actually making disciple makers in an ongoing process that never ends. You don't have to be a seminary graduate or to have memorized countless verses of the Bible. You just need to be a committed follower of Jesus Christ and have a desire to be obedient to the Great Commission. We have many strong supportive testimonies from senior pastors, executive pastors, men's ministry directors, and the individual men themselves who have taken this training course. Once again, you can scroll down to the bottom of this webpage and view the personal testimonies of these very men and pastors who have supported, engaged in themselves, and seen the huge benefits of this training firsthand. You can download the PDF, or better yet, purchase the training manual to gather your men together and go through this course in as little as 6 weeks as a group in your church. The cost is very low. This is not an expensive proposal for the training manual. It's an easy to follow and simple to teach, step-by-step guide that any man can easily follow. Each man who attends the training will need a training manual of their own so that they can effectively participate and become a disciple maker, thus fulfilling the Great Commission as Jesus commanded us. Finally, feel free to reach out to me personally for more information on how to go about gathering your men and teaching this course. I've taught groups of men this Disciple Makers training course at multiple churches. My contact information and my personal cell number are on this webpage, so don't hesitate to reach out to me. If you are a church pastor, on staff as a men's pastor, a discipleship leader, or the men's ministry director, then I can certainly assist you. Shoot me a note through email or text, or simply dial my number and give me a call. I am always encouraged to answer questions about how to get started with this training at your church or as a one-on-one as you carry it out yourself. And I can refer you to other men, pastors, or men's ministry leaders who have embraced this training manual to grow their own men. Thank you. And God bless you, brother, for your heart and the intentional efforts I see your men becoming equipped and truly learn how to live out the Great Commission.